Introduction. The creepy story of little Josiah this one winter in '83, right? It came down hard on this tiny New England town, like way harder than any winter anyone could remember. Everything was all quiet and slow, like the snow was some kind of magical blanket making the whole place hush-hush. In this little house on the outskirts, there's a kid named Josiah Blackwell, just 12 years old, and he goes poof into thin air. But not just any old way. Oh no, it's gotta be weird. So, weird, people talked about it for ages after. His dad, Harold, was painting this portrait of him by the fireplace, getting all obsessed with the details, like the tilt of his cheek and that little shadow under his chin. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for that night there's this weird buzz in the air like something big was about to happen. The next morning, it's a full-on blizzard outside, but guess what? Not one footprint anywhere near the house. The doors are locked tight, windows untouched. No sign of the kid, just a chair with a ghost of his shape on it. The only thing left of him was that half-done portrait. But here's the kicker, the painting looked different now. It was like it had come alive overnight. The colors were more vivid. The shadows had more .dumph, and those eyes. Man, they looked right at you like they had a secret. Mrs. Blackwell. Poor lady, she's the one who finds the painting all changed. She swears she sees his painted mouth twitch just a tiny bit. But when she gets close, oh boy, it's freezing, like someone left the fridge open in Antarctica. Her husband's still working on the painting, even though the model's gone Mia, saying it's not done yet because apparently neither is the kid. Days go by, and the townsfolk are buzzing with ideas. Some say he wandered off, some say he got kidnapped, but no tracks, no clues, and the painting. It starts to get eerie. Trees pop up in the background, all bare and creepy, like something out of a horror flick. And then, bam, the kid's not in the house anymore. He's in the middle of this snowy forest. His face is all serene, like he's not lost, but like he's exactly where he's supposed to be. The townsfolk get all jumpy, throwing around words like witchcraft, and curses like they're in Salem all over again. Mrs. Blackwell tries to play it cool, but she's totally freaked. Sometimes she'd hear her son's voice, all muffled like he's stuck behind a wall, and the silence in the house is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Then out of the blue, the painting goes blank. Just white, like someone hit the reset button. But that coldness is still there, like the air itself is holding its breath. And Mrs. Blackwell? She's pretty sure now that whatever took her boy didn't just stop at him. It had big plans for the whole family. And let me tell you, that's when things really started to get hairy. Asterisk setting the scene back in 1883. We've got this quaint little town in New England that's basically got the whole winter wonderland vibe going on, except it's the kind of cold that really makes you feel it in your bones. The streets are all cobblestone and they're covered in this super thin ice, like nature's version of a slip and slide. And every time you step on them, it sounds like someone's crunching up a bunch of potato chips. The buildings are all cozy and snug, packed together like they're giving each other warm hugs, but their roofs are totally weighing under all that snow. It's like they're wearing snow hats that are just a smidge too heavy. Now, imagine the windows in these houses. They're all frosty, like someone went nuts with a can of spray snow, and when you peek in, you see these warm, flickery lights from the candles inside. It's like each window is a little TV screen showing you folks just trying to keep warm and toasty, cooking up hearty stews that take forever to make but are totally worth it. Baking bread that's so dense it could probably double as a doorstop. And lighting up the place with candles that smell like a mix of beeswax and warm cookies. Life in this town is a weird combo of being really religious and also superstitious. People go to church and sing their hearts out every Sunday, asking for a little extra help from the big guy upstairs to get through the winter. But they've also got their own secret ways of keeping the boogeyman at bay. They hang all sorts of funky charms made of bone or iron on their doors and tell their kids to avoid whistling at night and staring into the woods too long like, come on, who hasn't been told not to do something because of a spooky story? And let's not forget about the pastor, the guy with the booming voice who's supposed to be all about logic and faith, but he's got his own little charm stashed away too. Because old habits die hard, the newspaper is like the town's gossip central. The only way they get to know anything happening outside their snow globe. The stories start off small but grow into these epic tales that spread faster than wildfire, especially when the roads are blocked by snow and everyone's stuck inside playing telephone. It's like a game of Chinese whispers, but instead of funny twists, you get juicy bits of local drama. So, in the middle of this frosty little world, there's the Blackwell house and something crazy goes down one stormy night. Josiah, the kid from that house, just vanishes like he was never there? No. Tracks in the snow, nada. And in a place where everyone's all in each other's business, you can bet this doesn't stay a secret for long. It's like throwing a pebble into a pond, the ripples spread everywhere, turning into whispers that get bigger and more dramatic with every retelling. Before you know it, the whole town's got the story, and no one's sure what's true and what's just someone's wild imagination running wild. This is where the legend starts to grow legs. It's like a plant that won't die no matter what. It sticks around in everyone's heads, gets passed around like a hot potato, and becomes part of the town's DNA. It's in the very air they breathe, in every crunch of a snow-covered cobblestone, in every flicker of candlelight in those frosty windows. Whether you believe it or not, it's there, whispering away. Especially when the wind picks up and it sounds like it's telling the story all over again. And once a story like that gets its claws into a town, it's like trying to stop a rumor in high school. Good luck with that. It's part of the town forever, like that one friend who just won't take the hint to stop sharing their drama. Asterisk, the Blackwells were just your average family, I guess, but they had their own quirks. There was Harold, the dad, who was basically a painter for a living. He was really good at it too, but let's face it, in a town where everyone's trying to stay warm, having your portrait painted isn't exactly a priority. His hair had started turning gray early, probably from all the stress of not selling much. But when he did get a chance to paint, oh boy, he put his heart and soul into it. The people in the town respected him, but they didn't exactly line up with their wallets out to buy his stuff. So he mostly painted for the folks who could actually pay. And when no one could, he'd just go ahead and paint for himself. The thing with his paintings was, the people in them looked super intense, like they were actually in the room with you, not just stuck on a canvas. Margaret, his wife, was the rock of the family. She had this deep faith that was part of her, like her nose or her toes. She was pretty good at keeping everyone in line, and her house was cleaner than a whistle. Even when the snow was doing its best to mess everything up, you wouldn't catch her playing around. She was all about order and rules, like she had a holy rule book for everything. But she did love her family, even if she didn't show it in the usual mushy ways. She'd rather tell you to wipe your feet than give you a big ol' hug. Their kid, Josiah, was a weird little dude. He was 12 but had the vibe of someone much older. He was always so still, like he had to think about moving before he did it. And his eyes, they'd just get lost in paintings. It's like he heard secrets in the brushstrokes or something. When you talked to him, it took a moment to get him out of his daze, and when he did reply, it was always in this calm, low voice. It's not that he didn't have anything to say about those paintings that had him so mesmerized. He just didn't feel the need to share it with everyone. They all lived in this skinny house on the outskirts of town, where the fancy streets turned into dirt paths. It was cozy enough, with a fireplace that had to work overtime in winter. The smell of paint and stuff was everywhere because that's where Harold did his thing. And Margaret, bless her heart, she kept the whole place ticking like clockwork with a word here and a look there. As for Josiah, he'd just float around the house, taking it all in like he was part of the scenery and not just living there. It was like he had one foot in their world and the other in some painting he hadn't found yet. The painting itself, so it was like the first week of December 1882, right? This is when the frost was all chillin' on the town and the days were so short, it seemed like the sun was basically playing hard to get. That's when Harold Blackwell had this idea that he should paint his son, not just a little scribble or something, but a full-blown portrait. He figured it'd be a cool way to show everyone he wasn't wasting his time with the brush. So he set up this big OL easel in the parlor, right smack in the middle where the light from the front window could hit it during those few hours of afternoon sun. Josiah. His son sat in this high-back chair with his tiny legs just swinging above the floor, boots and all, while Harold got busy with the paints. The kid didn't say much, just stared off into space like he was in some kind of trance. The whole scene was pretty quiet. Just the sound of the palette knife going back and forth and a faint whiff of turpentine fill in the air. Now, the first time they did this, it was supposed to be quick, but Harold got all into it. He couldn't stop painting. It was like he had a wild hair up his butt or something. The sun dipped down and the fire got all low and cozy, but Margaret had to come in from the kitchen to tell them it was way past dinner time. Harold basically told her to scram and let them keep doing their thing. And boy, did he get obsessed with this portrait. He'd wake up before the crack of dawn to prep his paints and keep going till the wee hours of the night. The lamplight would shine on the canvas and you'd just see this glow from the wet oil paint. The whole room was like a bubble of quiet, except for maybe the chair creaking when the kid had to move a bit. And all the while, the snow outside was just piling up like nobody's business. But here's where it gets a bit weird. The neighbors started whispering about lights in the window, super late at night when everyone else was snug in bed. Some folks swore they heard Harold talking to the portrait like it was a real person. And apparently he'd lean in close to it, whispering away. People were thinking he'd lost his marbles or something. Margaret. She kept her mouth shut about all this gossip, but she couldn't help but watch her man like a hawk. Sometimes when he took a break from painting, she'd see this weird look on his face like he was starving for something. And when she checked the portrait, it was like the kid's eyes were moving. But when she blinked, it was back to normal. She couldn't put her finger on it, but something fishy was going on. Strange happenings at the Blackwell place. So Margaret started noticing weird stuff real early in the morning, when it's that time before the sun's fully up and everything's all pale and quiet like the world's holding its breath before the day kicks in. She'd get up real quiet like, not wanting to wake up Harold or little Josiah, and head into the living room to throw another log on the fire. It was there, in that half-lit room, that she saw this painting of her son, and man, it was like his eyes moved a smidge as she walked by. At first, she thought she was just imagining it, like maybe her eyes were playing tricks because she was tired, but it happened again, and it felt like the kid in the painting was actually watching her. It was pretty eerie. The feeling didn't go away, it kept coming back, and not just with the eyes either. Soon it was like the smile on the boy's face was changing too. Sometimes it was a little smirk in the morning, and then by the time the sun went down, it was more of a sad or serious look. Now, Harold was always messing with the portrait, working on the background or fixing up the folds in the coat and stuff, but he never touched the kid's face as far as Margaret could tell. Yet somehow the expression kept changing. Harold just kind of brushed her off when she talked about it, saying all good paintings had a bit of life to them, like they're breathing or something. But the way he said it didn't make her feel any better. and he'd sometimes stare at the painting with this weird intensity, like he was having a silent chat with it that she wasn't invited to. Then, one morning in the middle of January, she heard something that really freaked her out. It was the sound of Harold talking to himself in the parlor, so she went to check it out. He was standing there, frozen, looking at the floor, and when she saw what he was looking at, she got goosebumps. There were these little smudges of paint, like someone had been playing around with the portrait in the night, and the kid's hand was out of place, reaching out of the frame like it was trying to grab something. Or someone. And the thing was, Harold's painting stuff was all put away, clean and tidy, like he hadn't even been touching it. When Margaret tried to talk to him about it, he said it must have been an accident, but she could see he was lying. He talked like he was talking to himself, not her, and she just knew that if she reached out and touched that hand, it'd feel real, like she could shake it or something. So she just bolted out of there, heart racing, and didn't dare look back. At the painting. She didn't want to see anything else weird happen. And as she left, she thought she heard this tiny sound, like someone dragging their finger across wood, really slowly and on purpose. It totally creeped her out, and she didn't know what to do. The night before the disappearance, so the night. Before it all went down, it had started to snow. Nothing too crazy, just your typical winter scene that the Blackwells had seen plenty of times. But as the sun began to peek out, the snow went full throttle, turning everything into a giant snow globe. By the time lunch rolled around, the town looked like it had vanished. The storm had basically told them, "You ain't going nowhere," with its wind howling like a pack of wolves and the cold air sneaking in like a ninja, even though they had a fireplace roaring away. Harold was in the parlor, totally in the zone with his painting of little Josiah. The kid was just sitting there, as still as a statue, while the snow went bonkers outside. It was like the storm wasn't even happening in that room, just the sound of the brush and the occasional crackle of the fire. But even though it looked peaceful, Margaret felt a weird vibe when she saw them. It was like the portrait was watching them, not the other way around. When she left to check on dinner, she couldn't shake the feeling. After a bit, she went back, but everything was eerily quiet. Harold was still there, brush in hand, but frozen like a statue himself. And where was Josiah? The chair was empty, just a shadow where the kid should have been. She looked at the painting, and oh boy, it showed the same chair, but no sun. Just a gap where he should have been, like he got up and left without a trace. Her heart started racing. Did Harold just decide to change the painting? But nope, the brush was clean, and he looked like he'd seen a ghost. When she asked him where the heck their boy went, he was just as confused, saying he'd only looked away for a split second. The storm outside was getting intense, making it feel like the house was being buried, and that empty chair in the painting was giving off major creepy vibes, like it was expecting someone else to sit down. The immediate search kicked off right when the first bunch of neighbors showed up, stomping snow off their boots and looking like they'd just been in a snowball fight with Jack Frost. Their coats were weighing them down with ice, and the wind had given everyone a rosy glow on their cheeks. The Blackwell's place went from being dead quiet to a beehive of activity. The storm outside was like nothing they'd seen before. It had gotten even worse, like it was on a mission. The winds were like a crazy cat's claws, scraping along the streets and making trees bend like they were doing the limbo. The snow was so thick that you couldn't see more than a few steps ahead. Guys with lanterns, which were already icing over, fanned out from their house, yelling for this kid, Josiah. But every time they thought they heard something, the storm would muffle it like it was playing a mean trick on them. Dogs were with them too, trying to sniff out the boy's trail, but they'd stop and whine, looking all confused. Some of the dogs just sat down and said, "Nope, not going further." The men started getting all jumpy. looking over their shoulders like they expected to see something spooky pop out of the snow. The women weren't much help either, just standing around whispering their wild guesses. Some said the kid must have wandered off to the river, but in this kind of weather? Others talked about some traveler picking him up, but nobody had seen anyone come through town since dawn. The whispers got weirder, something about the boy being strange, his dad being weird with his paintings, and the painting itself being off. Like really off inside. It was like a snow globe had come to life, but with a storm inside it. The windows were shaking with every gust of wind, and you could hear the fireplace crackling away, but it felt like the heat was playing hide and seek with everyone in the room. Harold was just standing there like a statue, staring at this painting. His wife, Margaret, begged him to let the guys look at it for clues, but he kept saying the kid was still there, just not in the same world as everyone else. This made the neighbors real nervous, and one of them even crossed himself. The painting had changed, Margaret noticed. The chair was still there, looking so real you could sit in it, but now there were shadows where there weren't any before, and it looked like something was moving just outside the frame. It was giving her the creeps, but Harold was in his own world. He didn't eat or drink, just stared at the painting like it was going to whisper secrets to him. Margaret tried to get closer to touch these weird smudges that looked like frost, but he snapped at her to leave it alone. It was like the painting belonged to someone else now. The search went on and on into the night. They came back, one by one, frozen and tired, saying they couldn't find anything. The storm just kept throwing a tantrum, burying everything in snow. The town would be talking about this night for ages. The night the Blackwell boy disappeared and left everyone wondering if he was just playing hide and seek in a place nobody else could see. All because of that eerie painting in their parlor, asterisk the altered portrait over the next few days. Folks who popped into the Blackwells' living room couldn't believe their peepers. The painting on the wall had changed, no doubt about it. At first it was so faint, like maybe the fire's flicker was playing games with the light. But as time went on, the change was for real. What used to be just an empty chair and a dull room background started turning into something else. It was like trees began to show up, all spooky-like behind the chair. They were just dark smudges at first, but they grew clearer like winter birches against a stormy gray sky with snow falling faintly. Margaret was the first one to really notice. She figured maybe she was seeing things 'cause she was tired and sad, but she couldn't stop staring. Her hubby, Harold, was in the same spot he always was, right in front of the painting, stiff as a board, listening to something she couldn't hear. He barely talked or ate, just stared at the wall like it was a TV show. He didn't even touch the painting, just watched it change like it was the most natural thing in the world. By the second day, it was like someone had swapped out the parlor wall in the picture for a full-blown snowy woods scene. The details were crazy. You could almost feel the cold from the weeds poking through the snow. Harold talked less and less, but his eyes never left the painting. On the third day, the woods got thick, like the trees were huddling around the chair. And then Margaret's heart nearly stopped when she spotted a little figure in the corner, almost too small to see. It had a heavy coat on and was all hunched over, like it was cold or hiding. The way it stood, it reminded her so much of their kid, Josiah. It hurt to look. Her voice cracked when she said his name, but Harold just murmured, "I told you he's still here." It wasn't like he was happy or sad, just ... resigned. Margaret took a closer peek, trying to see the face, but the hood was shadowed. She thought she saw some footsteps leading into the woods, but the snow looked like it was moving, playing tricks with the light. Word got around faster than the flu in winter about this changing painting. Neighbors were banging on the door, dying to get a glimpse. Some left looking like they'd seen a ghost, others whispered prayers. A few said it was just grief messing with their heads, but no one could explain why the woods got denser each day, or why that tiny figure looked like it was moving around. Even the folks who thought it was all in their imagination couldn't argue with the way the painting changed. It was like a piece of their own sadness had come to life on the wall. Harold was dead set against taking it down, like he was afraid of what might happen if they did. And every day, Margaret felt more and more like she had to look, even though the room felt colder and the house's creaks were louder than ever. It was like the storm had moved inside with them, and she couldn't help but wonder just how far into that painted forest her little boy had wandered. Asterisk. Theories and gossip people were talking, saying maybe the kid just took off, right? His dad's expectations were through the roof, and his mom's rules were like so strict. They pictured him slogging through the snow, looking for a place to hide, like a barn or someone's house, or maybe he hitched a ride on some random carriage to get the heck out of there. But, the thing that got everyone stumped was the no footprints deal, and the dogs, forget it. They'd go all the way too. The parlor door, start whining, and just wouldn't go in. Then there were the whispers about the creepy stuff. Not your usual bedtime stories kind of witchcraft, but the real, gritty kind that clings to old places and families with secrets. They'd sit around the fireplace, talking in those hushed tones like they didn't want anyone or anything to hear. They'd talk about spirit photography, those photos that supposedly grab a piece of your soul with the click of a camera. Some folks wondered if Mr. Blackwell had figured out a way to do that with his paint and canvas, like pulling the kid's soul into the picture or something. The whispers got even weirder, though. Some said he'd made a deal, like a pact with the big, bad no-face. Stuff you wouldn't say out loud unless you wanted to invite trouble. It was like he'd become this amazing artist all of a sudden, and everyone knew he used to be just okay. People claimed they saw him at night, chatting up the portrait like it was alive and the fire's flames. They'd lean in like they were listening too, and the shadows. Oh boy, they didn't look like his shadows. The Blackwell place started to give everyone the creeps, especially after the storm. The snow outside looked like nobody had been near it, like it was afraid to get too close. The house had this vibe, like it was hoarding all the bad mojo. The air inside was thick and heavy, like you couldn't even breathe right. And at night, those windows, they didn't reflect the lamplight, man. They showed something way colder, way deeper. The painting, oh, it was a trip. The boy in the snowy woods, he kept getting further and further from the chair, like he was really walking away. And no matter what Margaret did, she'd cry, pray, sit with it for hours. The painting just kept changing. It was like the boy was leaving them, step by step, into that frozen forest. And nobody had the guts to move it or even touch the frame, 'cause the stories had everyone spooked. And the fear was just too darn thick. The whole thing was like a sad, spooky movie nobody wanted to be in. Asterisk the traveling painter's backstory. So some folks around here started poking into this guy, Harold's past, just out of curiosity, They talked to some of his old buddies and dug through dusty old town records and newspaper clippings that could crumble in your hand. But get this, the more they found out, the more interesting things got. Turns out back in the day when Harold was just a young buck, he'd hopped on a boat to Paris like in the 1860s or something. He was on a mission to become some kind of hotshot artist. While he was there, he hooked up with this crazy French painter who was a total mystery man. This artist had a bunch of nicknames, but people usually called him Maître du Souffle, which is French for master of breath. Why? Because his paintings weren't just pictures, they were like real people staring back at you. You could almost smell their perfume or see them move their head a little as you walked by. It was weird, but amazing. And let me tell you the gossip about this French guy's living art. Oh boy, that was the juicy stuff. They said he had some secret way to trap a person's soul in a portrait. Like you'd sit for him, and boom, you might not come out of it the same. Some folks claimed their lovers disappeared after getting painted by him, and their paintings were stashed away like they were cursed. Others talked about kids aging in the pictures, their faces changing as if they were living inside the frame. Now, Harold, he studied with this dude for a bit, but nobody's really sure for how long or what kind of wild stuff he learned. All we've got are some old letters that make it sound like it was a pretty intense time. Like it wasn't just about mixing paint and playing with shadows. It was something deeper, almost like magic. When he came back to the States, his art was different. It was like he had some kind of dark secret. He mostly painted people, and he'd always do it with the door shut. People would whisper that some of his paintings were still in progress, and if you saw them, it could be dangerous. Like the faces weren't just painted on, they were still becoming. Then, when that kid, Josiah, went missing in that painting of his started changing, those old whispers turned into shouts. Maybe the French guy taught him too much, or maybe he just opened a door that wouldn't stay shut. Maybe the kid's not even lost, just stuck on the other side of the canvas, waiting for someone to come play. It's all kind of eerie, right? Like, is that really the kind of art we want in our town? But you can't deny it's got everyone talking. Margaret's breakdown be February 1883. The Blackwell home got all quiet, like someone had turned the volume down on the whole world outside. The wind was still playing its tunes with the shutters, and the snow was whispering against the windows. But inside, it was eerier than a graveyard at midnight. Margaret couldn't even stand to go into that parlor anymore, like it had become some sort of forbidden zone. She'd zip through the rest of the house, all jumpy and nervous, her hands shaking like leaves when she had to light the lamps in the hallway dotted first. She kept it all to herself, not telling a soul. But, fears like that one friend who can't keep a secret, it just spills out eventually. So she tells her neighbor this weird thing in this tiny little voice like it's a ghost story around a campfire. She says she hears this voice, right? Her little brother Josiah's voice calling to her from behind a wall, or so it seems. But here's the kicker. It's not like a memory or a dream or anything. It's a real sound, like he's right there in the room with her. Spooky, right? Well, the neighbors, they don't laugh it off. They get this look on their faces, the one like they've just seen a ghost themselves. They start whispering prayers, and some of them swear they're never setting foot in that house again. The humans are curious creatures, so some of them come by looking for answers, hoping to catch this ghostly sound with their own ears. They tiptoe into that dim parlor with the windows all covered up like it's hiding something, and they stand by this painting. It's like they're expecting the kid in it to jump out and say boo or something. But what they actually start to hear, it's not quite a laugh or a shout. It's a murmur, like the house is whispering its own secrets. And then some of them swear they can make out a kid's voice, all soft and sad, like it's calling from a place that's far away but somehow right there. Not a scared kind of sound, more like a kid who's lost and just wants to be found. And it's not just the voice that gives them the heebie-jeebies. There's this other noise too, like someone's taking a pencil and scratching it really lightly on the wall, except it's coming from the painting. Sometimes it's just random, like someone's bored, but other times it's got a beat to it, like it's following some sad tune. It's weird, I know, but they all felt it, this little shiver down their spines. They don't stay long, these visitors. They leave looking like they've seen a ghost, all pale and tight-lipped. And the thing is, they can't shake the feeling that the boy in the painting, he's moving closer to the edge, like he's trying to break free. And the shadows, they're not just shadows anymore. They're like inky fingers reaching out from the canvas, getting longer and darker with every visit. It's like the painting's coming alive, and not in a cool Picasso kind of way. It's More like a nightmare you can't wake up from. Asterisk the final change in the painting weeks passed, and the whispers around town turned into a faint, eerie buzz. The Blackwell place still gave folks the creeps, so they'd steer clear of it. But that painting, man, it was something else. It had this weird way of changing, making the people who dared to look at it feel all tense and spooked. You see? All Harold was stuck in the parlor, just staring at this painting day in, day out. It was like he couldn't tear his eyes away from it. The forest in the background used to be just a boring old backdrop, but now it was all deep and shadowy, like it could suck you right in. And that kid, Josiah, his figure started to pop out more every day. It was weird, like he was slowly coming to life or something. One morning, Margaret couldn't help but stand by the door, feeling all hopeful and scared at the same time. It was like she could feel the painting changing. And boy, was she right. That little dude in the painting was now so close to the edge that it seemed like he might just step out of it. It was weird seeing Harold like that too. Dude was obsessed, working on the thing around the clock, his eyes glued to the painting, mumbling to himself. He looked like he hadn't slept in forever, his skin tight and his hair a mess. It's like he was fighting with something only he could see. And then bam, everything changed. Margaret walks in one morning, expecting to find Harold in his usual spot, but nope. The chair was empty and the painting, as bare as a wall. Not a tree, not a flake of snow, not even a hint of a boy. Just the canvas, looking sad with a coat of paint so thin it could have been painted yesterday. The air in that room was colder than a freezer, and even though you could smell the faint scent of paint, there wasn't a brush or a rag in sight. It was like the whole scene had been wiped out, and Harold, he was just standing there, staring at the blankness like he'd seen a ghost. When Margaret asked him what happened, he just stood there, not saying a word. Didn't even budge when she tried to get his attention. It was eerie. The storm outside had passed, leaving the sky all clean and pale, but the house felt like the darkest cave. And deep down, Margaret just knew that whatever was in that painting hadn't disappeared. It had moved on, and she had no idea where to. Asterisk Harold's disappearance month had gone by since the weird day the painting turned all blank, and the town kind of moved on. But not really, because everyone still talked about it. But inside the Blackwell place, it was like time had stopped, you know? Harold got super quiet and sad, like he had lost his best friend or something. He'd walk around slow, with his shoulders all hunched over like he was carrying a heavy backpack. He talked less too. He'd spend hours in the living room, where he used to paint, but now there was just this empty canvas staring back at him. It was weird because he'd stand there for ages, not looking at the canvas, but looking through it, like he could see something we couldn't. His wife, Margaret, tried to keep herself busy, doing all sorts of chores and praying a lot, but it felt like nobody was listening to her prayers. She'd hear him talking to himself at night, really soft, like he didn't want anyone else to hear. It gave her the creeps, man. The people in town didn't see him much anymore. When they did, he looked rough, like he hadn't slept in forever. And his hands had paint on them even though he hadn't bought any new paint in weeks. Crazy, right? Some folks talked about how maybe the Blackwells were jinxed, and how their son, Josiah, had never really left. And now maybe Harold had gone to the same mysterious place. Then one morning, poof, Harold was gone. Margaret woke up and called for him, but it was dead silent. No footsteps, no nothing. She checked the living room, and his coat and hat were just lying there on the floor, like he'd taken them off to start painting. But the canvas was still just as empty as ever. Something about it was different, though. It looked like it was breathing or something. It was giving her the HEBIE-JEBIs that the whole town went nuts. Everyone talked about how they hadn't seen him leave, and the door was still locked. Some people thought he just couldn't handle being sad anymore and wandered off. Others were sure he was looking for his son. Then there was this old guy who said he heard tapping noises and saw the curtains move, but when he checked, nobody was there. Spooky, right? Margaret couldn't take it anymore, so she closed the door to the living room and didn't go back in. But sometimes she'd catch a glimpse of something in the corner of her eye on that canvas. Like there were people in there, really faint, like shadows playing peekaboo. It made her heart race. Years passed and she left to live with her family. The house just sat there, all empty, and the story got to be like a campfire tale or something. Some folks said if you drove by on a snowy night, you could see a light in the window and a shadow moving on the canvas. Like the world in the painting was still alive and kicking, just waiting for someone to jump in. Creepy stuff. The painting's story, so this canvas left the Blackwell place, right? It had this weird vibe of sadness and people just being really, really curious about it. Some dude from Boston, totally into weird and eerie stuff, bought it without blinking. And this guy's house was like a museum of oddities, death masks, old mirrors that looked like they had secrets, and paintings nobody knew where they came from, all giving you the creeps as you walked by. Margaret from the Blackwell house basically said, "Take this and get it out of here," because she was so spooked by it. The Boston collector didn't even argue, just left the cash on the table and took the painting. He kept it in his own private little gallery where only the cool kids got an invite. And let me tell you, that canvas had everyone talking. People swore they saw stuff moving on it like shadows playing tag, but only when the lights were down low. The collector was like, "Theft, you guys are just seeing things." But he couldn't help but sneak in there at night when everyone was asleep. He'd just stare at it for hours like it was telling him something. Fast forward to 1891, and boom, a massive fire hits Boston's warehouse area. The rumor mill says the painting was stashed there for safekeeping, but when the dust settled, it was gone. Some folks think the collector had a hunch and yanked it before the fire did its thing. Others say it just vanished in the flames. Either way, no one's seen it in any of the usual spots, but here's the kicker. People still talk about it like it's out there, getting passed around in hush-hush deals in shady rooms. It's like a ghost story that won't die. It's always popping up at some old-timey estate sale or in the back of a dusty house. Looking as empty as a blank page, there's this one maid's tale that stuck around. She said she saw something in that frame one day, a boy and a man fading into some snowy woods. Freaked her out so bad she quit on the spot and didn't even grab her paycheck. Now, the art world whispers about it like it's Bigfoot, some say. It's tucked away in a secret vault. Others think it's just chilling in some rich family's house. But here's the twist. Apparently it's got a thing for winter. When the first snowflake hits the ground, it's like the painting wakes up and shows this whole scene that's sharper than a Tackaboy, his dad, and a forest nobody's ever seen before. It's like it's waiting for someone to stumble upon it and be like, "Oh hey, I know that place." Crazy, right? Asterisk eyewitness accounts from years back, so a good while after the Blackwell story kind of disappeared from the news and turned into just a spooky tale that folks in the town passed around. Something weird started happening. People who had been little kids back when all that stuff went down began telling about how they'd spot a boy wandering around the edge of town late at night. His coat was always done up tight and his hair was this pale wheat color. His face hadn't changed at all, even though a bunch of time had gone by. It was like he was playing hide and seek with the moonlight, slipping in and out of the shadows like they had a hold of him. Some folks saw him hanging around these old barns that had seen better days, the ones with half-broken roofs and creaky wooden beams that talked to the wind. He'd just be there, not doing much, not saying anything. His eyes were the spooky part vacant, but somehow super aware. And get this, when you tried to get close, he'd just vanish. No footprints in the frost, no trail, nada. One brave farmer decided to shout out to the kid, and boy, did he get a reaction. The kid's head swiveled slow and sure, and there was something in his face, just for a split second, like he knew who the farmer was. But then, poof, he stepped into the barn and was gone. When the farmer checked it out, it was colder than a snowman's, what inside? And there was this faint smell of oil paint. Weird, right? Now, some people in town thought it was all just a bunch of hocus pocus, like their imaginations had gone wild or something. But too many stories matched up with the same tiny details for everyone to just shrug it off. Some folks even whispered that the boy was searching for his old man, or maybe for someone new to tag along on his ghostly adventures. Those old barns started giving everyone the heebie-jeebies. Especially after the sun went down, kids would dare each other to sprint past them, but no one was brave enough to stop and see if the creepy kid in the shadows was really there. It was like he was just waiting for the right moment for the next snow to come down. Paranormal investigations in the 70s. When everyone was starting to get into ghost hunting on late-night radio and weird TV shows, a bunch of self-proclaimed Ghostbusters thought they'd hit the jackpot. They'd heard whispers about this creepy Blackwell canvas and decided to track it down. They dug through all sorts of old stuff, dusty property records, letters that were practically falling apart, and talked to people who didn't want to say much, but every clue pointed north to a Victorian house that looked like it was about to collapse in rural Vermont. The air there was so thick, it was like breathing in mothballs and wet wood. This old house belonged to a guy in his 70s who kept to himself. He said the attic hadn't been touched in ages because it just gave everyone the heebie-jeebies. His family had owned the place for over 100 years, and apparently some weird stuff went down that spooked his grandpa enough to lock away a bunch of their old stuff. At first, he wasn't keen on letting them in, but something changed his mind. Maybe he was just tired of having all that eeriness in his house, so he handed over this tiny, rusty key, and the door to the attic creaked like it was sighing after holding its breath forever. It was freezing up there, and there was junk everywhere. Old furniture under sheets, stacks of newspapers that had seen better days, and trunks tied up with rope that was falling apart. And then, under a layer of dust thick enough to hide a car, they found a big canvas dot. It looked like a blank slate at first, but when they shone their flashlights on it, one of the ghost hunters swore they saw something. They took some snaps, regular and some with this fancy new infrared thingy one of them had, and let me tell you, when they got those pictures back, it was something else. There was a kid's face, just faint enough to give you the creeps, looking down like he was hiding something. And the thing was, when they first saw it, the kid's face was a bit different. It was like it changed while they were there, like it was caught in the middle of doing something. They didn't want to mess with it too much, so they left the painting and sealed up the attic. But after they left, some of them started noticing weird stuff at home, scratching noises, cold breezes with no windows open. And one guy even had a dream about a kid in a beat-up coat just standing in the snow, not saying a word. They tried to go back and show the old man their ghostly photos, but the house was empty. He passed away and his family had cleared out, leaving the attic bare. The painting was gone and no one knew where it went. All they had left were those photos. And let me tell you, those pictures are pretty spooky, a ghostly face in the middle of nowhere, just watching. And that's the whole story of the Blackwell canvas, still giving people goosebumps when they talk about it. Asterisk skeptical explanation skeps have been brushing off the story as a simple small-town legend that grew out of a mix of sadness and spooky beliefs. It's about a kid who supposedly took off during a super harsh winter in 1883. And a dad who was so upset that he started seeing stuff in a painting, right? People say it's just the way folks back then talked. making a sad story even sadder and weirder until it got really wild. Now, skeptics look at the talk of eyes moving and scenes shifting and think, nah, just some folks with overactive imaginations in a poorly lit room. They say grief can make you see things, and when you're all by yourself in the countryside, whispers can grow into full-on warnings. It's like a story people tell to keep each other company on long winter nights, and because everyone was really into religious stuff and superstitions back then, it's no surprise people called it cursed. But here's the kicker. There are these old photos, drawings and notes from people who owned the painting. They all say the picture changed over time, even though they didn't know each other. At first, it was just a boy in a chair, but later on, you could see him in the snow and eventually just an empty scene. The skeptics are like, maybe some cheeky person changed it as a joke, but no one's ever found any signs of that. For the believers, these changes are like proof that the story is real. They think it's like the kid in the painting was actually moving, living his life in there, and the picture was just showing us. If it was all in the dad's head, the painting shouldn't have changed, right? But it did, like it was growing along. With the legend. So, skeptics have two choices. Say it's all just a bunch of lucky mistakes and forgettable memories, or start wondering if art can hold some kind of secret power. Maybe it's not just paint on a canvas, but a window to another place. If that's the case, then maybe the Blackwell canvas is out there somewhere holding on to its mystery. It's like a door that could lead anywhere, and we've got no clue what's really behind it. Modern sighting sauce of just a few years back. In the winter of 2015, a guy who sells old stuff in a chill coastal town in Maine found this really old, unpainted canvas. He'd bought a bunch of junk from a storage unit at an auction, and this was just chilling at the back of it all. The canvas was huge, a bit yellowed with age, and strung up on a wooden frame that smelled faintly like it had seen better days, probably because it had been through a fire or something. He didn't think much of it at first, just plonked it in the corner of his shop, propped up by some old mirrors and picture frames with fancy gold bits, but then, over the weeks, he started noticing something weird. When the sun was setting or when it was all gloomy outside, the canvas didn't look so blank anymore. There were these faint shapes, like shadows playing tricks, kind of shimmery and gray-blue. It was like a ghostly forest was trying to pop out of the canvas. The dealer thought maybe it was just his eyes playing up or some old paint bleeding through from the other side. You know, one of those weird things that happen with old stuff. But as time went on, these shapes got more real, not less. It was like there were trees, all misty, and a small, ghost-white figure that looked a bit like a kid, but he had his back to you. The dealer didn't say anything to his customers because he didn't want to sound crazy, but at night, when he was all alone, he couldn't help but stare at it. He felt like if he looked long enough, the picture would come alive. He started keeping his shop really dark, just a little light at the door to show the way in. It made the colors look richer and the shapes more defined. Sometimes he'd swear. He saw the kid's head turn a bit, like checking him out, but when he blinked, it was just a painting again. One night, a customer came in and felt all the hairs on her arms stand up when she saw the canvas. She asked if she could buy the kid in the painting. The dealer said no, even though he didn't know why. He started locking it up at night in the back room, 'cause he'd catch these weird sounds, like someone was playing with the fabric, brushing it against the wooden door. The dealer went quiet about the whole thing after some local journalist wrote a piece on weird stuff in antique shops along the coast. Next thing you know, his shop's closed, windows covered with paper, and people are saying they saw asterisk. Closing theories was this whole thing with Josiah just some random event, or did something way weirder happen that cold winter's night? Some folks reckon it was all because of Harold Blackwell's time with this peculiar French guy, who knew some serious secrets about this art form called living art. Basically, the idea is that paintings in this style don't just look like you. They're like a little piece of you stuck in there. So imagine Harold slaving away on this portrait of Josiah every night in December, and with each brushstroke, he's not just slapping paint around, he's actually weaving some kind of invisible web that's pulling his son closer to this hidden place no one else can see. And Josiah just sitting there, all quiet and still. Maybe he wasn't just being a good kid. Maybe he knew what was up with that painting. If this living art is the real deal, then maybe the father-son duo didn't just vanish into thin air. Maybe they're still in that painting, hanging out in a world that's not quite finished, like a dream that keeps on going. Before they disappeared, people said they saw weird lights coming from the room and heard whispers in a language that didn't make sense, like the painting was alive and talking. Could be that Harold didn't just jump into the canvas out of sadness, but because he had to, because something in there already had a hold on Josiah. And now, if the art's still kicking, maybe they're both just wandering around in this painted wonderland, lost and alone. The question is, if you stumble across this painting now, is it just a sad old thing, or is there more to it? Like, it could still be alive, chilling in some attic or private gallery, waiting for someone to notice it again. And if it sees you, watch out. Because suddenly you might feel like you're part of the scene. The thing with this painting is, it's got a mind of its own. It doesn't stay put. It slipped out of the history books and art collections like it doesn't want to be found. Maybe it moves around because it chooses to dot, so if you ever end up in a room with this old canvas that seems empty, but you catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of your eye, maybe a snowy woods with a tiny figure in the distance, you might want to keep walking. Because if you get too close, you might just find yourself in the painting with them. And once you're in, who knows if you'll ever get out again. The real world might start to feel a bit wobbly, like it's not quite as real anymore, and that painted world might just reach out and grab you, asterisk conclusion, the empty frame. So, if a painting has the power to hold on to a person's soul, then maybe, just maybe, all Josiah Blackwell is still out there, traipsing through a world that's totally not ours. It's like he's in some kind of painted wonderland made out of stuff like brushstrokes and pigments, right? This place is all about forests that aren't really forests. Snow that's just perfect and cold but never gets soggy, and a quiet that's eerier than a mime convention. Sometimes he catches glimpses of his past, like his mom calling to him through the snow, but it's always a tease because she's just a shadow. A whisper in a place with no sound. This world's clock ticks differently, too. Time's all wonky, man. It's like it's painted in layers with the sky doing a whole mood ring routine, changing colors like a chameleon in a box of crayons. The stars are just blobs of white paint that don't budge, and the snow doesn't even crunch when he walks on it. It's like the universe decided to give him the silent treatment, but hold on, he's not totally on his own. Sometimes he feels his dad, Harold, around like he's painting something just over the next hill, but it's never close enough to make out. It's like they're playing a game of cosmic Marco Polo, separated by a wall of shadow or a sneaky paint stroke. They might have walked right past each other a gazillion times without even knowing it. Now, if the whispers and legends hold any water, that creepy Blackwell painting is still out there, waiting for some unsuspecting soul to get lost in it. People say it changes when you're not looking, like it's got a mind of its own. It's like watching a movie that's never the same twice. You might spot a kid in the woods, probably trying to get home, just like everyone else who's ever stepped into it. But beware, because if that painting gets a good look at you, it might just decide to keep you. It's like it's got a gravitational pull or something, and once you're in, it's like you're stuck in a never-ending winter scene. It's a trip. Man, it's all fun and games until it starts popping up in your dreams, and then bam! You wake up in the middle of this painted forest with nothing but a memory of your comfy bed. So, if you ever stumble upon this old canvas with the hint of snow and nothing much else, think long and hard before you take it home. It's like a siren's song, but with less singing and more potential for eternal paint imprisonment. And if it does start to call to you, maybe it's because you're already part of the picture. Just remember, if you decide to take that leap, there's no guarantee you'll ever find your way back. 'Cause that forest inside, it's a bottomless pit of brushstrokes and loneliness, and it doesn't like to let go of its new pals.